So this article here looks at mass shootings in other countries and what they have done about it versus here in America, what we don't do. So after mass gun killings, other nations changed course to notable effect. Right? Here in this country, we do a lot of talking, and then nothing happens. The world over, mass shootings are frequently met with a common response. Officials impose new restrictions on gun ownership. Mass shootings become rarer. Homicides and suicides tend to decrease too. After a British gunman killed 16 people in 1987, the country banned semiautomatic weapons like those he had used. It did the same with most handguns after a 1996 school shooting. It now has one of the lowest gun-related death rates in the developed world. In Australia, in 1996, massacre prompted mandatory gun buybacks that saw, according to some estimates, as many as 1 million firearms melted into slag. The rate of mass shootings plummeted from once every 18 months to so far only one in the 26 years since. Imagine that. Canada also tightened gun laws after the 1989 mass shooting. So did Germany in 2002, New Zealand in 2019, and Norway last year. Only the United States, whose rate and severity of mass shootings is without parallel outside of conflict zones, has so consistently refused to answer those events with tightened gun laws. Though such restrictions have always brought some controversy, most were broadly embraced by voters in other countries. Even in Australia, where conservative-leaning politics and rural traditions have long favored gun ownership, citizens broadly accepted the buyback. Some even surrendered weapons they were legally permitted to keep in a show of support for their country's tightening gun laws. And this was a conservative Australian government when this happened. Every mass shooting is, in some sense, a fringe event driven by one-off factors like the ideology or personal circumstances of one shooter. The risk is impossible to fully erase. Still, the record is clear, confirmed by reams of studies that have analyzed the effects of policies like Britain's and Australia's. When countries tighten gun control laws, it leads to fewer guns in private citizen hands, which leads to less gun violence and to fewer mass shootings. Britain today has one of the strictest gun control regimes in the developed world, with even many police unarmed. But it was not always that way. The country's history of sport hunting had ingrained a long cultural tradition of gun ownership, especially in rural areas. That began to change in 1987 with the so-called Hungerford massacre, named for the small English town where it took place. A 27-year-old man used 2 semi-automatic rifles and a handgun, which he owned legally, to kill 16 people. His motives remain unclear. Britain's conservative government swiftly banned rifles like those he had used and mandated that shotgun owners register the weapons with police. The 1996 school shooting in a small Scottish town where a local man killed 15 students and one teacher prompted more sweeping changes. A government inquiry recommended restricted access to handguns. The conservative government went even further, banning all but the smallest caliber handgun, which a subsequent Labour government banned the next year. The reforms also require owners of permitted firearms to pass a strict licensure process, which involves interviews and home visits by local police who can deny approval if they deem the would-be owner a potential public safety risk. So, mass shootings did not completely disappear in Britain. An attacker killed 12 in 2010 and another 5 in 2021, but all forms of gun-related violence have dropped significantly. Today, there are about 5 guns per 100 people in Britain, except in Northern Ireland, where this number is higher, one of the lowest rates in the developed world. The gun homicide rate is about 0.7 per million, also one of the lowest. Whereas in America, I think they're about maybe like 120 guns for every 100 people, more guns per people in the United States, I guess, than anywhere else in the world.